Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Giamatti.
And I'm Stephen Asma.
And this, as promised, is your bonus-wag with Stuff You Should Know's Chuck Bryant. See you on the other side, waggers. Chuck, are you a skeptical human being? Are you like pretty skeptical guy? Do you have, I'm curious, just like what if this kind of...
Good question. I'm kind of, I grew up Southern Baptist, which should tell you a lot. I am now staunchly atheist, which should tell you a lot. So as far as believing in that kind of religious magic, I don't. As far as conspiracy stuff, I don't really get into it that much. Sometimes it's kind of fun to read about certain lighthearted ones. Like your live show, fucking Gethard.
Oh,
that guy.
Chris Gethard. He's awesome.
Perfect guest for a Chinwag live show. Like that, he was incredible.
Yes.
But like that kind of fun conspiracy kind of thing, I enjoy. But skeptic, I'm generally fairly skeptical, I would say. Although I did see a ghost perhaps once in my life.
Oh, okay.
In which case, I'm maybe not a skeptic. I don't know.
Do you care to share that at all? You don't have to. And
no. I'm happy to tell it. I didn't want to, the guy with one tooth doesn't want to presume too much. One tooth missing.
You don't want to go off on topic.
One tooth Chuck?
Yeah. I saw
please.
a ghost, you guys. And, so this was in college. I went to University of Georgia here in Atlanta now. My friend and I were coming home after a night out, and we had rounded a corner in his car. He was driving, came upon a four-way stop of stop signs, and there was this, and I swear to God, all this is true. No reason to make any of this up. There was this old woman standing in the middle of the intersection that looked 200 years old, steely gray hair. I'll never forget it. She was wearing a black robe with a purple sash, and she was standing in the middle of the intersection holding a book. I've always said it looked like a Bible, but that's just because it had the gold leafing around, I can't, I didn't see, she wasn't holding it up like Holy Bible, but holding a Bible-like book in her hands like this, and she was looking away, and her knees were bent, and she was just holding it.
Wow.
Dead still. We pull right up. I start jokingly yelling, like, what's that? Kind of kidding around.
Nice.
And then as we got closer, I was like, holy shit, that's a thing. And my friend was looking at me like, what are you yelling about? He looks up because he's driving, and we pull within 3 feet of this woman and turn in the intersection. Yeah. This is a residential neighborhood, so we're, it's like 25 miles an hour and then slower when you're turning. So it wasn't a high-speed situation. And we pass her, and she's right here on my right, and she didn't blink an eye. She didn't move a muscle. And his clutch, like he pops the clutch and forgets how to drive for a minute. Yeah. He's so freaked out, and the car conks out. We turn around, we're probably about 100 feet away, and look through the back window, and she's not there. And I always say, like, I don't know what it was. I'm not saying it was a ghost. I just know that this thing happened at like 2 a.m. one night, and I can't explain what the heck it was.
And you both saw it. He saw it too.
We both saw it. She was not translucent. She looked like a real solid human. It could have been some disturbed old lady.
Yeah, it could have been somebody lost
I have no idea.
Something.
But in a robe at 2 a.m. with a purple sash. The whole thing was just really, really weird, and still one of my best friends. And every once in a while, when we're hanging out, we're like, "What the hell was that?"
You're like, "Remember when?"
Well, that's super compelling, though, to have two people have the same thing like that is a really compelling one. Was there anything else? Was there any other, like, did you feel anything? Did you hear anything?
No,
nothing.
No, I felt nothing. I heard nothing. I've since, this is pre-internet. I was in college in the early 90s, so there was no way to kind of easily research that intersection. But I went back and found out where it was, tried to do just a little Google research stuff, and to see if there was some woman killed there 100 years ago, but I didn't see anything. So, who knows?
When you looked away, when the car conked out and you guys looked away, how long were you not seeing her before you looked back and she was gone? In other words, was there time for just a person to sort of skedaddle out of there?
To like exorcist spider crawl out of there?
Yeah, exactly.
I would say from the time we turned to the point where we were like, what the fuck is going on? It was, I mean, it couldn't have been more than 8 or 10 seconds. It was pretty right away. Okay. And she was very, very old.
Okay.
So and it was pretty wide open. There wasn't like she couldn't have tucked behind anything in the immediate area. It was just, I don't know, guys. I have no explanation.
I don't know why. I'm like, I'm fairly skeptical about a lot of things. I'm actually, I've come to entertain and believe a lot of things too, even in the course of doing our podcast. Mm-hmm. But the ghost thing is one of the hardest things for me to accept. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. Like, give me Bigfoot, give me Loch Ness Monster, aliens, yeah. But somehow ghosts really are hard for me. It's strange.
Well, they're coming from another sort of like dimension in theory. I mean, Sasquatch in theory is a thing that exists and you have an analog to it. It's like, it's natural. You could say it looks like an orangutan. By the way, how about that orangutan that cured its own face? Did you see this? Did you see this?
So cool. So
this
cool.
Is so fucking cool. Well, I'd always heard that orangutans were I don't know if they're the closest to us. I don't know if bonobos or or however you say that, they're the closest. Is that right?
Genetically, they're closer to us, yeah.
But I think, I know that orangutans do a lot of mimicking people in really kind of interesting, profound ways. So, I mean, apparently a lot of animals and primates do this. They find some way to kind of soothe themselves. The chimpanzees apparently will rub themselves with some particular kind of leaf. And it's more kind of cleaning themselves and things like that. This was just recently in some protected part of, I guess it's in Indonesia that the orangutans are. I think it's, And, they follow these big groups of orangutans, and this big male orangutan with one of those extraordinary faces, those incredible, but those big sort of lobes off there. They're just amazing looking. His face, he had gotten a huge gash in his face, and he put together some kind of poultice of this particular herb and put it on his face and healed himself over time.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Totally healed himself. And it's the first time that they've ever seen an animal very consciously use something for its curative properties, not just sort of like, I'm going to clean myself or I'm going to rub this thing in it because it feels cool or something. He knew that this thing was going to heal this wound in his face. It's insane.
I got to tell my wife that because she's an herb farmer and gardener and makes all kinds of poultices and sprays and all kinds of things where she's like, don't go to the pharmacy, come over here. And so I'm going to tell her this, and she's going to say, see?
Does she do a lot? Do you use a lot of these things? Do you not use many, like, would you not go to the doctor much? You just spread a...
Oh, no. It's nothing like that. Okay. But I use a lot of
natural cures.
Yeah, like yarrow spray and just stuff like that on burns and scrapes. And I mean, I used it on my teeth and that worked out. All kinds of her natural toothpaste.
Yeah, your teeth look great, man.
Sensational.
No, I'm kidding. She doesn't make a toothpaste.
But I like this case because it shows you that animals have culture, and most people have not wanted to grant them culture until these really radical examples. Like the bonobos and the chimps, they're very close genetically, but they have two very different cultures. Like, but chimps will hunt for meat, and then the males will use the meat for a sexual access. So it's like political. They'll give it to females in order to then mate with them. So they use it like a currency. And bonobos don't eat meat. They mostly eat fruits because they live in a region where there's just fruits everywhere. And so the female, they can't bribe the females with fruit because it's everywhere. So they have this whole other sexual politics and culture based on what access they have to food. It's fascinating.
That's why I always brought just fistfuls of ground beef to dates and stuff like that. Just pockets filled with ground sirloin to any date that I had. And it was. Let me tell you guys, it was a winner. It was an automatic winner.
Flawless game.
I got a lot of game. Had a lot of steak tartare in my pants.
Oh my God!
To speak.
Oh wow! This went in a direction.
Would you say that you're a strict materialist or pretty close to saying that there's nothing beyond the material world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bridge that I'm having to cross now. I have a 9-year-old, and some of those questions are coming up, and my wife is trying to get me to slow walk the whole, hey, you're worm dirt You got 70 to 90 years on the planet, so make good use of it, because after that,
Yeah,
nothing.
you want to dial that down a little, maybe.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Like, should you? How do you? I mean,
Yeah. I guess you didn't, Paul. Like you said, you went full on with your
well,
son.
no,
right?
I didn't go full on, but it was definitely something. But what's complicated for me is that in the interim, I think I've actually realized I can't claim to be a strict materialist, really.
Yeah.
When because I do actually have had enough. I mean, even the experiences I've had that have seemed supernatural or super normal, and I can sort of find an explanation for a lot of them. The few that I can't jar me enough to go, well, I don't think I can actually claim to be completely materialistic or a strict materialist, because I believe there's something. I believe too many wackadoodle things. I mean, there's too many things.
You're not a materialist.
No. So I led my son astray by telling him that it's all, there is no God, and that he's worm food. But he seems to be doing okay, and maybe he'll come around to his own.
Well, I think we all like to, my personal theory, and it's not, I think a lot of people believe this probably, is it's not, I think people probably created these things to make themselves feel better about dying. Is that, one day we're going to, Stephen, you're going to be up there jamming with Tom Petty and Prince. And
a great band.
Yeah, exactly. Paul's going to come in with your theremin.
With the theremin, yeah.
They're going to be like, who invited theremin,
and
guy?
Go straight to hell. Then I just get kicked right out.
No more therapins in heaven.
We made these things up to make ourselves feel better about that this could be it, that we'll be reunited with grandma and grandpa and everyone one day, and all the animals we ever loved. And it's just, I don't know. I just don't buy it anymore.
Well, there is something like, there's something weird about this Silurian hypothesis that has a weird spiritual impact, because even if you're an evolutionist, and I am, I think, natural selection shapes the organism to whatever environment, its adaptations are needed. So it's not really going to some progress to some superior end. But if you look at human beings, you'll see a progress story of industrialization, computers, the mind is getting, eventually will be fused with some mainframe. You can tell a sort of progressive story where in the future is when you're going to have a superior kind of being. Even evolutionists think this, but the Silurian hypothesis just knocks that in the head, because it says, you know what? In the past, they could have been even more superior to you. Then it all fell, and now you're back on the rise again. That's really hard to process, even for a natural evolutionist.
Yeah, that's some Star Wars shit right there, because Star Wars was a long time ago. I think you kind of forget that sometimes.
Right, it's the past.
Yeah, you think it's the future. Yeah,
right, it's the past. Wow, that is kind of hard to take, because as an evolutionist, you want to think that it's going to progress to some ultra refined point where it's got some. So that's almost like a spiritual element to evolution, that it's got this sort of there's some larger purpose at the end of the chain that's going to. Have you ever read this guy, Olaf Stapledon? Have we talked about Olaf Stapledon?
You've mentioned Olaf Stapledon to me before.
Yeah, he's pretty great. He's a cool British science fiction writer from sort of the 30s. I think he was kind of a socialist, a communist. And he wrote these really kind of he wrote a great future history called Last and First Men, which sort of goes from the 30s to millions and millions and millions of years in the future. But it's all in a continuum that doesn't really have this sort of dips and divots and rises the way we're talking about. It's all like a rise to something better. But, I suppose in the grandest possible time scheme, this could be seen as building upon something that came before still.
If you're Hindu, you're used to this idea of cycles. But if you're Western, your mind has been shaped somewhat by religion. Even if you didn't want it to be, you're thinking there's going to be, an end of days, a glorious beatific vision. So it's even in your scientific theories, there's a weird spiritual progression idea or something.
Yeah. But religion, you're right. It was so interwoven through so many cultures that it's inescapable, even if you are an atheist.
Right. It's just really fascinating that you can't get rid of it, that the patterns of it are so deeply implanted you can't think any other way. But it's interesting. The Hindus do talk about sort of constant collapse and rebirth, right? I mean, it's a series of universes that sort of repeat. But that's because the Buddhists, and I suppose Hindus too, they sort of believe that you are, though, progressing upwards through reincarnation. That's a kind of like evolutionary, kind of psychic and physical evolution that's going towards some point for personal perfection, I suppose. Right.
Yeah.
But
Not
necessarily
personal. Well, I mean, personal until you achieve it, then the goal is to have no ego, no person,
not
no
at all.
self.
Right.
Oh, right.
Well, right. Or personal only insofar as you will not be a person anymore.
Right.
At some point. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. And isn't the one theory of aliens that they are super evolved humans that left?
Oh.
And
That's
now they're
interesting.
coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Because
So
a lot of the
simple.
depictions, I know there's a few things like the big, large head, our brains are growing bigger and bigger. The
That's
fact
a
they're
cool
usually
theory.
just
That is a cool theory.
slits for your ears and slits for your nose, because what is required to hear is not the ear and the earlobe. It's what's inside, and like the nose doesn't smell the inside the nose smell. So those things would eventually naturally select out away from our body. And if we're using our brains more, we're not using our physical strength as much. So they're smaller, and I don't know. It's interesting to think about for sure.
It is, but that's that particular kind of alien. As we know, they're gone. Now it's the lizard people. It's the lizard people who've taken over, right? The Greys.
The true
Greys are gone.
ceruleans.
That's right.
Greys.
The Greys are gone. That's interesting, though. Just so they've come back, and they're sort of, that's interesting.
That would explain why they have two eyes and, a mouth and two arms. The body plan is similar. That would explain. Well, that's very interesting.
It is.
I didn't look at the thumbs though, Stephen.
Yeah. They
Do
need
they have-
them thumbs,
Do
man.
the Greys have thumbs?
Do they
I've
have
never-
thumbs? Do those?
I've
I don't.
never-
Do the Greys have thumbs? They don't really.
They
do
better. They better. That's what I'm saying.
What do you make of the whole UFO thing? Did you see this thing? Somebody just sent me a thing that's going around now of this weird object that goes by a guy's plane. It's like it's the latest like fancy shot of some kind of weird UFO thing.
I don't know, man. I mean, if this stuff is not, I mean, these days there are so many ways to realistically fake things. But if you're talking about older tape, how can you see that stuff and not think like, what the hell is that? Then what could it be then? I mean, I don't know about, we've researched a little bit into Roswell and all that stuff. And I'm not sure about the U.S. government had aliens on a slab and were dissecting it or not, but it's very compelling stuff when you see Air Force pilots and Navy pilots saying like, what the fuck was that on your header? They should know what's up there, I would think.
I never really paid attention to this whole issue until that stuff started to crop up, like in the last, say, 5 years. And then I was
the military,
oh my God, this stuff is very compelling.
Yeah, well, because it has a real dimension of believability to it now. It's definitely moved into a weird place when you have the director of national intelligence basically kind of going, it might be something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's pretty compelling. You even have like Matt Gaetz, like being like, the worst guy in the world. And it's like, but you're seeing him like kind of blown away by something he learned. And you're like, wow, he's dropped his shtick and he's actually sort of like, he doesn't know what to think. You know what I mean? You're like, wow, it must really mean something because that guy's been knocked sideways by this thing. So
well, this has been a very fine chinwag, my man.
It has been. Thanks, Chuck. Thank you very much.
That was fun, man. Thanks a lot, Chuck.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films, hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Original theme music by Luke Topp, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Audio production supervision by Jared Brom and Matt Dyson. Editing and mixing by Jeff Neal. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Research assistance by Aidan Brooks. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.